Sparking Change with Gigi, a show that aims to make the world a better place by bringing together authentic minds. This show encourages each of us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Get ready to be inspired and join us on this journey to create a brighter future for all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sparking Change with Gigi. I'm your host, Giovanna Twaterone. In today's show, we're going to continue to talk about mental health awareness, because I truly feel that this is something that we should keep going and not stop just because the month of May is over. So today's guest with me is Kelly and David. Thank you, guys, and welcome to Sparking Change with Gigi. You are, so important to the communities for the work that you do, and I wanted to bring you out to my audience to really know how important it is to continue to help people and really go towards mental wellness, right? This is what we're doing. This is what you guys are doing. So welcome. And David, please, let's start with ladies first.
Yes, ladies first.
Kelly, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. Gigi, I like saying, my name is Kelly Melissa Reinhart. I am the founder of Make Mental Health Matter, formerly known as BCC Evolution. We are a nonprofit organization around mental health and suicide awareness. I actually lost my middle sister in 2017 to a completed suicide, and I just wasn't educated. And I, over time, have gotten a lot of certifications and education, and I found that when we start to educate people about knowing the signs and the symptoms, and we're not having to fully rely on the mental health space or there are other strategies that we can utilize in life. So everyday people like you and I can help those in need and fill that gap of when somebody starts experiencing a mental health challenge up to the point that they can get professional care. And that's where, community and connection really comes in. And that's what truly saves lives. So we're just getting to the root cause of suicide by focusing on the mental health aspects. And that's when I give back to the community, and then also help people that are struggling. So get them connected into resources, because sometimes we just don't know where to go, who to talk to, or how to help ourselves. So that's the other part that we do.
That's beautiful. I know that we're all in it together. And that's why I say, it's so important to know that you're never alone. And this is what we're trying to communicate, right? When we support each other. So David, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a topic that's very near to my heart, because I'm a suicide survivor. Out of the numbers, when the numbers show up at 89% of people who attempt suicide are unsuccessful. And statistically, it's a larger percentage of people. And that's what we need to do, is actually figure out, like Kelly had said, is really figure out why people are going into that situation. What are they doing? Are they using their resources? That's the most important part, is not knowing your resources. That was my problem. I knew the resources. I knew how to help people. I had helped people in that situation. I didn't want to be helped at that time. I'm glad that I knew the right resources afterwards. For 36 hours, that was my story. That was my goal. And among the things I'm not good at is committing suicide. And I'm really glad, because of my story and sharing my story, I've already helped 9 families who've reached out to me after my TEDx talk. And, people who are actively thinking about doing it. And then I got them professional help, as well as some support help that I've been trained to do. And then 2 families who unfortunately had not, it was too late, but they wanted to understand a conversation with somebody who was a survivor and was willing to talk about it. And while it didn't change their circumstances, it allowed them to ask me questions. And I know my case was unique. We're all unique in our story, but we understand that blackness, that darkness that overwhelms us. And how do we have that window open? When I used to work with clients in the peer recovery space, I'd be like, can we just open the window a little bit? And it's the metaphorical window. It's because with the windows are closed, there is nothing you could have done. The day before my attempted suicide, there was nothing anybody could have done. In fact, that day, I wrote 50 letters to people to say there was nothing you could do, trying to mitigate some of the damage that I expected to occur. But those letters have been shredded. Nobody has got to see those letters because I'm here and I've now grown through that process.
God bless. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too.
Um,
Me too. That it's a long process that you go
mhm.
through. And one of the first questions, and I think we all need to ask the one important question: do you love yourself? And I was asked that question shortly thereafter, and it froze me. I didn't even think that that was an option. Like, and if you have to pause on something like that, if you have children and, do you love your children? You know that immediately. It's not, you might not like them all the time, but you love them is a different story. And I didn't love myself at that time. Now, when somebody asks me, that's the one question that I can answer really quickly. And I know I might not like everything I did that day, that week, but I know that I still love myself. And that's one of the reasons why I would never go back to that dark space.
Absolutely. I think when you really discover your purpose and why you're here, like I truly believe that pain and suffering is meant for us to wake up. It's meant for us to realize that we are important because society, the news, television, takes us away from who we truly are, how we can love ourselves. We have to look on the outside, but the tables get turned when you start looking at yourself from the inside, right? So Kelly, I know you lost your sister, and it's no different than when you lose a loved one, it affects you so much. What inspired you? I mean, I know she's probably inspired you to do this foundation, but something in me tells me that it has helped you as well to grow in the person you are today.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Dave, thank you for sharing your story. And I think that first, everybody needs to know it's important to share our stories, that
Yeah.
we never know again who is listening and who is going to need to hear this information. And that, I mean, I go back to, again, I wasn't educated. I didn't know what to watch out for, what to listen for. But I do know that my sister attempted 6 other times. And I honestly shut my emotions off to her because I was trying to protect myself and I didn't know any better at that time. But I also know now, and Gigi, like you just asked, was I really truly, although I would have never wanted to lose my sister because she was that one sister that I grew up with the most out of any of my 5 sisters that I have. And we were the closest because we grew up together. But she guided me into the space that she knew that I would, ooh, it's going to get me. But she knew that I was going to be able to take her story and her journey and share it with the world. And oftentimes people ask me, they're like, do you think that your sister led you to this place? And I do truly believe so, because had you asked me before she passed if I was ever going to be a speaker, or I was going to have a nonprofit, or I was even going to do any type of public speaking, let alone have a show of my own, I would have told you that you were crazy. But I really, it has guided me into this place that I never knew or thought that I would ever be. And I am so thankful for many, many mentors in my life that saw more in me, including my sister, than I ever saw in myself. And that's really what's led me into the place that I am today. And I'm just riding the roller coaster at this point because it's a really fun roller coaster. And I don't know where exactly we're going, but I do know the work that I'm doing is actually truly saving lives, because I have had several people tell me that. And that is huge, because when I started this, I said, if I could touch one life, then I've done my job. And luckily, I get a chance to do that every single day.
That's
That
awesome.
is so beautiful. And that's exactly why we're doing this show as well, is to really, if we can make a difference in one person's life today, you know, mission accomplished. That's how I see it, right? Because every life matters. Every life matters. Um, you have there, David, on the path. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so on the path has been my mentoring program, and I call that different than coaching, because I've been through the darkness. The things that I work with people on, including just creating stories, not just always as deep as mental wellness, but there's reasons why we might not have written a story. So it's on the path, personal attitudes towards happiness. It's our
Mhm.
goal. It's our path. There's a famous saying by Ram Dass: "We walk each other home." And through that journey where we walk each other home, how do we go through it? Sometimes we see obstacles that look insurmountable and we need to have overcome it. And sometimes those obstacles look to us from our perspective as insurmountable, but they're really not. You just need to see it a little differently. It's like the 3D effect. When you just move that little sideways, you can
Mhm.
see things a little differently. And that's where it really helps in the mental wellness space, having that mentor or somebody who knows the darkness. Is a story I use all the time about somebody who fell down a hole and then they can't get themselves out. And we might have prayers sent to us, friends who want to give us good advice that they feel is really going to help us. But sometimes you need somebody like me to jump in a hole, or like Kelly, we jump in the hole and then you'd go, okay, but now you have two people stuck. The trick is when you're trained in the right way, when you know the right resources, you know the way out. It doesn't matter when you're stuck in a hole. So that's why today, when I get in my dark hole, when I'm not feeling 100%, I don't feel 100% every day. But when I don't, I know my resources. I know what I have to do to get back on my plan. I've created wellness plans for people in the utmost, people with substance disease and things like that. When you can work in that type of level and know how to create the plan or guide them to the right people. I'm not saying I can guide everybody. I stay in my lane. And at the end of the day, if you know the right resources, you can always hold somebody's hand, walk with them on that journey, on that path, be a pathfinder, and then kind of move it through so that way they can soar in their lives.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Kelly, you do the same thing, you know, in a different way. And this is what we're trying to teach, is that the resources are out there. Talk to us a little bit about your organization.
Yeah, I mean, what Dave just said too is oftentimes you have to jump in that hole with them, but you also being trained to be able to know the path out. That, I mean, just you saying that is so powerful. And it is true. We, like, just like myself, I didn't know anything about how to help my sister, but over time I have learned through classes and certifications and mentors and just understanding mental health in general, the path through. And that's what I do, is I educate people. So we have whatever we're doing, whether it is our classes, it's our events, me speaking on stage, I am educating people and showing them the resources that are out there. And I know you know that I have a show also on E360 TV that's called Make
Yes.
Mental Health Matter, and that's what it's all about. It's about giving people resources so that they don't feel so alone. And that's what our classes do, whether it's a mental health first aid class that you take with us or you come to one of our events, which we have an event coming up this summer. I'm based in Colorado. And then also we have a film festival that is in September that's international and hybrid. So anybody can watch that. But ultimately, it's giving people resources and giving them the education that we can have these conversations. And it is absolutely okay. And it helps people feel like they're not alone. And then also helps them get out of that dark space and dig a little bit deeper to get out of that hole. So I love what David said about jumping in, but being able to have somebody there that can help you out of that hole versus you both getting stuck in that hole. And that's a lot of what we do too. So love that.
That's so beautifully. And I know that people have, in general, a hard time asking for help, right? And
What?
that is the key. So, David, how did you get to that point? Because that is so difficult. I mean, I'll go to a very simple thing like asking for directions when you're lost, right? When before the GPS days were here, we, you know, we didn't want to roll down the window and ask for help. It was just not something, because it just didn't make us look smart.
I almost
But
drove to Mexico one time without, I was in El Paso and I followed we had MapQuest, right? You print out I had the paper and people were following me and we almost all drove to Mexico because that's what the paper said. And we didn't stop around. And then we got to the border and we obviously turned around. We turned around, not obviously, but
yeah,
it really is. What do we do? So when I was in my darkest period, I knew at that point, I had already worked with people. I had worked with people who went through traumatic events, and I knew how to help them overcome those traumatic events to better themselves and take that next level up. I didn't want to do it. At that point in my life, my dad had just passed away the year before. I was moving my mom to Houston, where my sister lived. I was the primary caregiver for my mom after being a caregiver for my dad and being a caregiver not only as a parent, but and then my marriage wasn't doing well, so there was a lot of pressure, and my business wasn't doing where I thought it could go, and a few people had said negatively. We heard the negative stories of Dave. Hey, this is all your fault. And it wasn't. And some of it was in the way that I managed things. And I was like, if I'm the problem, I'm out. And I always call it a bad business decision. I mean, the day before I went, I was in a very high level meeting with a CEO of a local company who wanted to bring me on as a consultant. And they decided to go a different way, and that wasn't why. But I already had the plan going. It didn't matter how that meeting was going. Uh, that was my decision. I woke up that morning. I had my youngest daughter, and she was having an argument with her mom, and I was like, "No, you got to go to your mom's." She didn't understand it then, and so she was angry. And I remember she got out of the car, and I said, "I love you." I wanted to make sure that those were the important words that came out. And she slammed the door. She didn't hear. She was a young teenager, and afterwards, so after I had to tell the kids, so once you have to do something like that, you really, I used to, one of my nicknames used to be Kid Ego. So I got to tell you, when you have to tell your children that you just tried to commit suicide, you better lose your ego, buddy. Like, no matter what you do, it's much like in substance abuse. When you say you've done something wrong, you got to take ownership for it. And that's exactly what I did, is I took ownership of the poor decisions I was making because I couldn't see the light in the tunnel. I didn't want to see the light in the tunnel. I closed my eyes completely and I was comfortable. Many times you hear those stories about somebody who attempted suicide, and that last second after they jump off a bridge or some of the other ways, and they're like, "Oh my God, I knew I made a mistake." I was not in that category. I was very comfortable. But I will tell you, I heard a voice during my time, and that's among the reasons why I come back stronger now, because they said I have to go talk about this. I need to speak it. I'm going to be a voice that somebody's going to hear, that they're going to need to hear. See, I get chills every time I say that, because that's really what we need to do, is talk about it, not only about somebody else, because we use stigmas in our society. And that's the most frustrating part is, when we talk about substance abuse, all we see is the needle and a spoon. That's not the only thing that's there. I have to tell you, I live in Massapequa. Massapequa was one of the highest places of drug overdose deaths, but it was out of pills, not about heroin. It leads to it. So it's not about, oh, you're crazy, you're this. Those are words that if we use those, even the word depression, there's a clinical depression and then there's you're being sad. I now know the difference because I know I was in a depression at that time and I know the feeling differently. If we're really honest with ourselves, that's how we heal. I say turn the lights on in those darkest corners of your body, and guess what? You'll heal yourself, and you'll be able to heal yourself when you have the right resources.
so beautifully said. I do agree with you that when you are honest with yourself, right? And that is the key, because we try to make everyone happy on the outside. We try to really, we neglect ourselves because we feel that we're not important. And that kind of leads down a path that we end up getting into drugs or something else to try to cope with it, because we're truly at our soul level, like our soul wants to be recognized for who we are. We want to have a place in this on this world to show our greatness. But when we can't be ourselves and express ourselves, this is where we go into this dark space. We're going to take a small commercial break, and then we're going to come on and we're going to talk about, you mentioned, David, about the stigma. Let's break the stigma here when we come back, because it is truly what starts the healing process for people to understand that there is no stigma against getting well, right? Mental wellness. So we'll be right back, everyone.
Now, the vast majority, approximately 95% of the people of all countries, go around and around without aim or purpose. They drift with the circumstances of life, good or bad.
A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind.
Whereas the successful individuals create their own circumstances and ride them to victory.
When you're on purpose, you're living on purpose. You will never quit if you have a real purpose.
A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. But what I have done has been recorded, it's been tested, it's being taken to a free world, and it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born.
And it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born. We're some of those people that we're spreading this to the world. As your awareness grows, the doubt is gone, so that you can manifest whatever it is your heart desires. Isn't that beautiful?
So welcome back, everyone. So Kelly, let's talk about, what steps can we take to really break down the stigma against, mental health?
Whenever I talk about mental health, is we all have mental health. We all have a brain, and that's what mental health is. So first and foremost, mental health is not a bad word. It's not a dirty word. We all have a brain. Not all of us have a mental health illness, or I like to use the word challenge instead of disease or illness or disorder, because we can all experience a challenge at any given time. Like Dave he said that there's depression and then there's clinical depression, and they are two very different things. The thing that we need to understand is that statistically, 1 in 5 of us can and will experience a mental health challenge in a given year as Americans. And 1 in 25 of us will have a serious mental illness, disorder, challenge, whatever you want to call it. But also, suicide has probably played or been in your life, or you've been touched by suicide in some way, and it's getting much more prominent. So having these type of conversations, I think, is the first thing that we can do to really break down that stigma. The other thing is that I actually just had a conversation with some amazing friends that we have this safe space, and one mentioned that she is struggling with depression right now. And it was amazing in that conversation that she could just bring that up freely. And it wasn't something that she was trying to hide. She really wanted to have this open conversation with us. And it allowed the rest of the group to be like, you know what? I really am too. And it just blossomed into this amazing conversation. Nobody is judging each other. We are not broken. We are not trying to fix people. And you definitely experience things differently. So my experience is going to be very different from your experience, and vice versa. And we could literally be in the same exact experience and it will be different. So knowing these different things is part of the beginning of the process of breaking down the stigma. But I just think it'd be really cool to be able to walk around, and instead of walking down the hall and saying, hey, how you doing? Good. Hey, how you doing? Good. be like, hey, I'm having a really crappy day. I don't need you to fix me. I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to know. And I think that would be pretty cool that as humans, we could just express whatever is happening at that moment, not with the expectation that we're wanting somebody to fix us, but we just want the expectation of somebody to not judge us and meet us where we're at. And I think that's part of the process of breaking down this stigma.
Yes, I love that because, it's about, we're afraid of being labeled if we say something. And just to understand that there's nothing wrong with us sharing how we feel. Because, and David, you can, share your thoughts on this, but your experience that led you to almost commit suicide, it just didn't happen overnight, right? You had thoughts of it that eventually escalated to that point.
It did and it didn't. There was a breaking point, right? There's a straw that breaks the camel's back in that way, where I was like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. There were a lot of things, and some of that is also what Kelly was saying, is that you need to provide that safe space. Now, I'm a protector, which sometimes is also a trauma-based response. So, among the things that I was going through is my wife was just attacked verbally at work. So she came home at that time and she's complaining. And I'm like, well, why could you say nasty things to me and not say it to them? Which was not the right way to say it. So I'm not here to saying that I always say things right. And I've learned a lot since that day. And all she needed was that safe space that you just talked about, Gigi. She didn't need me to solve anything. She didn't need me to protect her. She wasn't asking for that. But we needed to have that conversation, and we didn't have that conversation. It's one of those things that I regret. But at the end of the day, that's also what we need to do. When Kelly was talking about her friends, they knew what they're each one's expectations. Just to say, I'm having a bad day, not to fix me, not to do anything, just to sit with me. And that's where I learned that next level of Dave, in being able to sit with somebody. I was always able to sit, but I always felt I needed to, help people, assist them through what they needed to. And sometimes just assisting is just holding space and being there with somebody,
Just
walking
listening.
along that path and not necessarily doing anything. Part of the stigma is also acknowledging who you are and what you do. Not everything you do is going to be perfect. And I'm not, even to this day, with all my new learnings, the improvements that I keep going, there's things that I'm going to need to learn. But one of the things I don't need to learn anymore is the expectations, but I also know who I want to be. I don't care what you want to call me, because right after my suicide attempt, I was verbally attacked. I was called a mental case, white trash, a whole bunch of things. That was after my suicide attempt, and they knew about my suicide attempt. I went into my car after that, cried, and that was not my ex-wife. So I don't want to, make anybody who's listening that was not. But I went to my car, and at that moment, that was one of my Phoenix moments, where I talk about the Phoenix often, where I said, no, this is not going to be how this story ends. I don't know how the hell I'm going to get through this. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't that clear, but we think about as the Phoenix dies. The Phoenix doesn't die. The real story, if you research it, and I have done that, is the Phoenix is always alive. It turns to ashes, and that's where we assume, but it's a spark of God. And I'd like anybody of your audience to say, do you not have a spark of God within you? And we just sometimes need somebody to point it out to you, because you might not realize it. And even to this day, I still have people go, I didn't see what you did, and my little spark has ignited somebody else. And that's the power. And that's how we change the stigmas. Seeing what words use, like even when we want to reduce weight, a lot of people say, I want to lose weight. I would tell you to reduce it, eliminate it, and that has nothing to do with mental wellness. It's how you use the words, and we could definitely change the less crazy people. I'm crazy today. No, you're upset. If you've yelled at your kids, that's a mental wellness episode. That doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It just means we shouldn't yell at our kids, right? That's today's society. But it's how we talk to our kids that builds all the strengths that we need to move forward. So it's all words. If everybody has experienced it, if somebody cuts you off and you get upset, that's a mental wellness episode. It's how we react. And it's hard. We're human beings. It's always going to happen. But how we use our language and how we move forward with our reactions is so powerful.
I love that. You know, studying Napoleon Hill work, his principles are all about our thoughts, our feelings. Like if we can control the thoughts that come into our mind, we can truly control our reality. And it's understanding how to think differently. Unfortunately, you know, I feel like we have a lot of conditions from growing up that we tend to see things either black or white. And that is not the case at all. You can change. If you change the way you think, you can change your thoughts and you can change your feelings and you can change your actions. It's knowing to ask for help, knowing to ask for help, because there's people out there who've been there, David, I mean, you're a perfect example. Know that people who have been there can relate to exactly how you're feeling. The situation may be different, but the feelings are the same. And to recognize it on a level of knowing the help is there for you and not to give up. I mean, that is the key here, is not to give up on yourself, because you came on this earth because you have gifts to share with the world. No matter what is going on outside of us, I believe we all came here with gifts, potential, a passion to do something. And when we're not connected to that passion, or we don't have something to look forward to, we find ourselves lost in a dark space. Or if we're doing too much and we're not acknowledging that we are important. I know, Kelly, you wrote an article in the Forbes magazine. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I also want to just add something to what you were just talking about. And I think it's important for people to hear, if you are struggling, that it can be hard. We all understand it is hard to ask for help. And where I would love to get society to is we're being proactive versus reactive. And that's why we teach the classes that we do, because it's easier when we have a safety or self-care plan prior to having one of those deep, dark moments. And if we can get into a place that we're going to be proactive versus reactive, I think in general, society could absolutely shift. And I think it's important for people to have that self-care or safety plan before they ever get to a place that they are in that deep hole. And that is something that we offer on my website. And I'll give you that information when we get to that point. But being able to be educated prior to, then getting educated after the fact. So I think that's just important. And words, yes, words matter. Everything that we say, everything that we do really, really matters. And I call it the Eeyore syndrome, the nobody loves me, everybody hates me, I'm going to go eat worms. That's how, if you're constantly in that energy, then you're going to draw in that negative energy instead of changing it, which Gigi, you were just saying, is we can change our energy into positive. So I just wanted to add that on there. But the article that I wrote in Forbes, it was in collaboration with a couple other incredible women. And we were really talking about business and wellness, because as entrepreneurs and as women and as, you know, those of us that are going about this business thing, it can be really, really hard. It can be really, really stressful. And we have to be very aware of our mental wellness so that we don't end up in crisis as entrepreneurs. And that's what the Forbes article just gave more tools around mental wellness before crisis. Yes. As an entrepreneur.
That's beautiful. Can you share some tips? Because I know for sure that many are going down the path of becoming entrepreneurs. You know, ever since COVID hit, I think the coaching business has, you know, skyrocketed, and home businesses have skyrocketed, and women are just really a lot, not just women, let's face it, we're starting to take more control of ourselves with, not only becoming entrepreneurs, but owning our wellness as well. What are some of the things that we can share that really applies to everyone here when it comes to taking care of ourselves? That's essential.
Yeah. I have some really, really easy tips, but when you're looking at being an entrepreneur, a business owner, it's not easy. I'm going to tell you first and foremost, it is not an easy journey. It is a journey that you will sometimes be really, really pumped up. Sometimes you're going to have really, really low lows, and it becomes what I do call the roller coaster of those moments that we have, whether it's that high or the low, and also acknowledging that you're not alone. I promise you, I take every single moment to just be very transparent and honest with anybody that is, whether they're looking at starting a nonprofit or they're already in a nonprofit, because the world that I am in a daily basis is very different than a for-profit business. And it's hard. It is very hard to be a founder. We actually have a whole support group for founders because nobody knows, unless you're actually a founder, how hard it really is in this space. So having a group of people that understand what you've been through and experienced is really powerful and very helpful. So find your community, find your connections, find your tribe, as I like to say, because they're going to be the ones that help you through. I had many of my friends last year. I was in a really deep, I was in a dark place myself last year. I was very overwhelmed. I was at the point that I almost walked away from my nonprofit, and I had several little birdies and my friends telling me, keep going, keep going. I promise you it gets better. I know it doesn't seem like it is right now, but it does. And I didn't know how that was going to happen, but I knew that there were people telling me that I had helped them and I had saved their life. And I was like, if it's not for anything else, it's going to be for those people. And then magically this year, the floodgates opened of abundance. And that was a shift that I never knew was coming. And that's where I say I'm just riding the wave of awesomeness for this year, because I didn't know that that was a thing. But luckily, I had my tribe that backed me up. And one point that I want to tell people, and this is scientifically based, but it's the easiest tool that I love to give people, because we always have our mouths on us. They are always on our face. And it has been scientifically proven that when you smile, whether it is a fake smile, you can fake it till you make it here, but your brain releases what I call your happy juices, your serotonin, your dopamine, your endorphins, and the upward motion of your mouth triggers your brain to release the happy juices of your brain. So if you are in a place that you're angry, you're negative, you're having those thoughts, smile, fake it till you make it. It may not happen at that very second, but I promise you it will start to change the chemistry of your brain and start to move you into the positive versus the negative. So that's the simplest tool that I like to tell people.
I love that. Again, it changes your vibration, right? Your energy, and it brings you to a safer place. I also know, and Dave, you allowed me to join in on some of the work that you do. Share with us how you bring together people in the community. You volunteer yourself and your time. And I think that's a big component of us really also healing when, we're in a dark place, to go out and serve, go out and volunteer, go out and see people that you can make happy, right? And share your love and your service. So talk to us about that a little bit, please.
Well, I've been lucky, and I agree with everything that Kelly just said. And what I'll do is also for your people. So not only do you smile, if you rub your hands in a slow way for 8 to 9 seconds, it's going to create delta waves in our brain, which triggers our amygdala, which will automatically calm ourselves down. Now, there's a little bit more, and I would say do it more than 8 seconds. That's your personal reset button. And when you can find that should be a resource, and finding the right resources. Resources also are a community. So you and I met through the Business Leaders Network. I'm a local leader in Westchester and in New York. And, it's just helping business owners, entrepreneurs, like Kelly said, we get into those parts. But also, besides doing that, I also have a charity called Goons for Good. And what it is we support other 501c3 charities. We have several missions, including mental wellness and substance abuse, veteran issues, women's cancer. There's lots of different issues. We support organizations helping children with disabilities, people with disabilities. And, that's what it is finding what you need to do. Because I had a mentor. The mentor that I had, his name was Frank Shankowitz. And nobody knows his name, but everybody knows his organization, the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And he started it just by showing up. And every time we show up and do something small, it's not about, and I hate to say this as a founder of a charity, it's not about the money, because money is a huge help. Don't get me wrong. I will not, go that way, but I will tell you, and Frank told me, everybody could do something. Please show up. And once you show up, that's where you feel good. That's where the oxytocin comes in, right? The dopamine comes in. It starts pumping you up. If you're giving, you automatically raise your level up. And the same thing is if you're in need, somebody showing up saying, hey, I care. That is always going to help. That's going to help the stigmas in mental wellness. It's going to always care, because being human is much more important than any of those other things. And that's what I love doing. So, I tie everything I do in my life is tied in an umbrella way. Even my logo back here for my podcast, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. It's not about violence. It's about bringing awesome thoughts, being authentic today. And that's also what helps us with our mental wellness, is being authentic, not trying to, maybe Giovanna's going to make fun that I'm going to wear a teal shirt. I don't care. I do have a teal suit. And at the beginning, people were like, oh, look at that teal suit. And now I walk in, that's like my Superman suit. When I wear
I love it.
I love it. And, it's really one of those things about being authentic. That's why we sometimes weigh those mental wellness issues so heavy on us, because we're carrying it the wrong way. Much like when we go shopping, we carry too many bags back in the house, and then one always breaks and we get upset. How about carry it differently? If we carry it differently, then we're able to manage a lot of the different things that happen to us. I now know in that 5 years since my suicide attempt, I've still handled some really heavy things. In 1 year, I lost my best friend. Then I took care of his mom, who had Alzheimer's, and then my own mom transitioned in that same year, 2022. And I handled it like a champ. Did I get upset at times? Sure. Life gets on too heavy, but I was able to carry it much differently than I did before my suicide attempt, because I was able to also clean out those dark corners in my life. I always say, one of the things I say is, the monsters in our head are much worse than the monsters under our bed. We build those monsters under our beds so big, and the monsters in our heads are even worse. And when we're able to shine the light, we don't get scared anymore.
So beautifully said. And I do agree with you, because, my own journey with my health put me in a dark place. And when you're ready to face those monsters, you become a different person. And when you become a different person, you never look back. There's no need to look back. You just look forward. And another thought is, when you are giving help, and like you said, when you're giving yourself to others, it's actually you're healing yourself. That is the best part about volunteering, is watching somebody smile and be happy, and then it's actually meant for you. And that is what I've learned through, giving. It's much better. You're receiving, and you don't even know that you're receiving while you're giving. I want to shift a little bit over to social media, right? Social media can be good and it can be bad. Like anything else, there's good side effects and bad side effects. Let's talk about the good side effects. So it's more important. Kelly, how can social media help those who may be of need?
Well, social media, and I this question, when you said that, I'm like, it made me giggle a little bit because at one point in time, my son said, well, I'm going to find an app that tells me about when you were younger. And I was like, well, good luck, because the internet wasn't around when I was younger. So I kind of giggle a little bit because I know we all grew up in a different time, and social media now, the good part of it is you have those instant connections. The other thing is that if I needed to reach out to somebody, or somebody needed to reach out to me right away, they could get to me instantly, and vice versa. And I think that being able, or when you're at a place that you know you need help, but maybe you're not sure how to ask for help, as we've said a couple times, somebody may reach out to you and start a conversation about something not related to how they're feeling or what they're experiencing. And it may just be a way for them to reach out for help. And so we can be receptive to those messages versus sometimes we get messages and we're like, well, at least I can speak for myself, but sometimes I get them, I'm like, oh, do I really want to answer to this person, or answer because I'm not really sure what their intention is? But it may be that time that they need to get help and they're just starting a conversation in a different way to see if they can trust you and that you are going to really truly listen to whatever they're expressing. And so I think social media plays a really good part in the ability to access people right away.
Connect.
And then also start to build those connections. Like, you can find and start to foster really great connections with people across the world. So I think that knowing we're all on this planet, and no matter where we live, we all go through similar experiences. And it's just good to know that we really truly are not alone in whatever we're going through.
Thank you. Thank you. And David, do you want to share some more points on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the great thing about social media is Kelly and I might never have met if it wasn't for social media, right? Even you, Giovanna, we might not have connected, even though you're in Westchester, I'm here on Long Island, right? So that's just 25, 30 miles away from each other.
Yeah.
We might never have connected. So there's lots of great things. But also, again, it goes back to that authenticity. Don't only think that, Dave's life is wonderful because he's doing all these things or he's seeing all these things, and there's not anything bad. That's why I share some of the bad things. And I'll tell you a story. So one couple of weeks ago, I had gone out for a walk. I was feeling great. And I put it out there and I said something that might have been less, or people were concerned for me. Then people were reaching out to me and they're like, are you sure you're okay? Are you really sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm really okay. I don't know what you guys are taking it. I'm fine. Sometimes I celebrate even the less good things because there's growth in that opportunity. So it's nice to have that if you put something out there, what they can have. But also understand, if they're only putting out something good, we just know facts. Life is not going to only be good. There got to be something else going on, right? They went through a red light. They got a ticket. They might not put that on Facebook. There might be something going on with their kids, their partner. You never know what's going on with somebody. And I think that's the biggest message, is when you see something on social media, ask that question. If you're really concerned, and don't judge so quickly. I know I used to judge very quickly because it was trauma-based responses. So if you're responding too quickly without the right information, that's always going to get you in trouble, social media or not.
Yeah.
I like social media. I think there's great benefits for it, but also understand a lot of social media also is manipulated. So please don't all believe everything that's on there. Live the life that you need to live outside of social media, because that's just an added bonus, not what life is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really the side effect. Kelly, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the other good thing about social media is puppy videos, kitty videos, and dance videos. I'm just saying, laughter is wonderful for your mental health. So if nothing else, scroll past the videos that are not good and go to the puppies and cats and the dance videos,
I
because
love that.
it will help.
Yeah, and get the loudest music that you can dance to, and just, you can shift your energies and your thinking by those, looking at those videos. I know it works for me. It works for me. Actually, it makes me not go to sleep if I play one of those videos at night.
Yeah.
So we're going to start wrapping it up. Kelly, tell us, what do you have that can help our audience when they go to your website? Spend a couple of minutes on that.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier, but we have 7 strategies for mental wellness and our safety and self-care plan. So being proactive versus reactive. And it really builds the safety and self-care plan around a triangle, because a triangle is the strongest structure in the world. And when you think of threes, then that makes a strong foundation, but it also goes into your brain, your heart, and your gut, which are 3 of our brains. So it's specifically designed in a certain way to help you be proactive versus reactive. And then when you are in that deep place, potentially, you have those resources already at your fingertips. And you can find that at makementalhealthmatter.org. And there's lots and lots of other resources on our website, as far as people resources, place resources, how to talk to somebody after an attempt or after the loss to suicide. So go check that out.
Thank you so much. And David, I wanted to bring out, I know we mentioned you did a comic book, right? You wrote a comic book. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a writer, and among the work that I do is helping you with your story. Sometimes our stories are really heavy, and finding a way to not only use our story, but also then what are you going to do with it? So I'm a speaker coach. So I've helped people write books, and shortly right after my suicide attempt, I was in a dark place, and I wanted to move the energy. So we were talking about that today, and what I did is I moved the energy. I wrote a story. And I was like, "Oh, this story is so good. It needs to be a movie." Well, I can't afford a movie. Okay, I started looking at costs, even cheap. I was like, "No." But I had a friend looking at my resources. I had a friend who has a comic book company. I said, "What do I have to do?" And he started telling me. And I was like, "Oh, that's expensive." He goes, "Well, nothing that you do in life is going to be free, right? If it's free, you're going to exactly get what you pay for." So I paid for it, and I love it. It's my comic book. I mean, I could show you that. It'll probably come out. I know it's
Yeah, we
always,
didn't see that
yeah,
much.
yeah. It's called the Pathfinder. So which is called,
Pathfinder. Okay.
yeah, but it's a story very similar to Sisyphus, and that's the guy who rolls the rock up the hill and rolls it back, and then it rolls back down, and he has to push it back up. Part of that story is really true to mental wellness. Is you push that rock up the hill, and then you have to go push it up another hill because something else is going to happen in another day. At some point, Sisyphus started finding enjoyment in pushing the hill. That was his job. Our jobs are to take care of ourselves, know our resources, know our abilities to then keep going through. And then at some point, it doesn't become a job. It becomes who we are and what we do. And that was the story of in that a gentleman had gone through a tough time with his wife or girlfriend, but he still loved her. It was my story that I still loved, in that case, my wife. And no matter what, I wasn't with her any longer, but that love never changed, and it still hasn't changed. But you still push the rock up the hill. I don't then give up. And that wasn't why I attempted suicide. So I don't want anybody to tie things together. Life just got too heavy for me. I wasn't using my resources. That's why when you ask me how we can get through it, if you know your resources, I know it already. Good. That's great. That's a first start. But you got to use those resources. I wasn't using my own resources.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest challenge. And that's why now I have those non-negotiables. Again, my swing the bat moments is about knowing our non-negotiables, our boundaries, our balances. I now know I need to take care of myself, or when I don't, something's not going to work well. Either I'm going to get unhealthy or I'm going to be stressing out and vent on somebody, which is not the way I want to do. Again, I've never, other than my sister and some teenage fights, I've never been in fights, not physically. My sister is the only woman in the world who can say I've raised my hand to her, and she does. She teases me all the time. But that was when I was 12. So let's be all, again, put things where it is. Let's be honest of who we are. But there's so many different ways to manage our lives by knowing our resources, but using them. I talk about it all
Absolutely.
the time. The ICTA disease. I know that already. Don't just know it. Do it, live it, and that's where we grow. And you can find me by David Chemetsky. I'm a really unique last name. Peace, love, and bring a bat, or davidchemetsky.com.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you, Kelly, both of you, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your stories. I think this is the best way that we can get the word out. Reach out for us. We're here to help. Everyone's here to help each other. It's the only way that this world gets better, right? And know that you're never alone. So thank you, everyone, for joining Sparking Change with Gigi. And thank you until next time. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining me on Sparking Change for Harmonious Living. I hope that our episode today has ignited a spark within you to create positive change in your own life and in the world around you. To learn more about how you can become a guest or supporter, head over to sparkingchangenow.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to me, and it helps me to continue producing content that sparks change in each of us and the world. You can find us on various platforms, including Google Play Store, Apple App Store, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Android TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to having you join me again next week on Sparking Change for Harmonious Living.